Hello, Eager to Know listeners. We have another re release of a past Eager to Know episode. This time it is with pianist, composer, musician, artist, creator, Paul Hamilton. This was done before I had taken piano lessons. I have now been taking piano lessons for 3 years, so I practice piano every day. I had all these questions for Paul 6 years ago when we did this because I had no musical experience. And I'm so glad because this is a much more interesting interview than it would be today because I would not have the questions that I was asking him. I encourage you, listen to this whole thing. This is a very chill conversation. We get into a variety of topics. He is an extremely interesting person. Him and I are actually now friends. I didn't realize that we had never met each other. We sort of reveal that at the end of this episode. We talk about like it's the first time that we met, which is really, it doesn't sound that way when we're talking. It sounds like we kind of know each other. Anyhow, please enjoy my conversation with Paul Hamilton. So let's talk about piano because I know I have never played an instrument, but I do know I've always wanted to, and I've always wanted to learn music, etc. Yeah. But I do know that piano is considered like I don't know if this is the right word, like the standard because it has it has a huge range in terms of octaves, and it's kind of like the best way to learn music. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's certainly a good way to learn music because you have all the notes just laid out in front of you. And yes, it has an incredible range.
Is that the only instrument that you play?
I dabbled in woodwinds and strings, a little guitar, just enough to be familiar with the instruments. I played oboe a lot when I was in high school. I can still pick up the instrument and play some stuff.
Okay. What is that experience, experiencing music? I'm not even sure how to ask this question, but when you are experiencing music on piano versus playing it on an oboe, are they closely related experience, or is it like a completely different part of your brain?
Yeah, I think they're different. It's a different physical apparatus that's in play. Mm-hmm. So in that case, they feel very different because you have to move when you're playing the piano. You have to control your motion. You have to control your movement according to what you're playing and how far you have to reach. It's just all physics and mechanics. Whereas with like a wind instrument or something, you can move the instrument around. Like people who play the violin or the guitar, you're mobile. You can move around on your feet. Whereas with the piano, you're kind of, this thing, it sits there and you have to go to it.
Okay.
So it's less free. However, we also have the flip side of that is we don't have to hold our instrument. So we're actually completely free. We're more free in a way. So,
okay.
And we have a pedal that opens up all of the strings and allows us to hold notes without using our hands.
Okay.
It's like, look, Ma, no hands.
I never thought about this.
Mm-hmm.
But also on the flip side, you're less free because you can't transport a piano around with you.
Right. And we can't move where our hands go. Our hands and fingers have to go in exactly that same spot in three-dimensional space every time if you're going to play a classical piece. So because the piano is physically there and it can't be wrong. So that's very restrictive. But in a way, it's like I think of playing the piano as topography, and you see these movement artists. What are they called? Parkour, like that jump over. They go through landscapes or cityscapes, and they jump over railings, and you know what I mean? They do somersaults, and then they jump over from another roof. It's crazy. There's lots of videos, but you look at these people, and you're like, what? But to me, this is kind of the microscopic version of that because the topography of the keyboard is like a little landscape, and you just have to move your fingers, which are like little feet, sort of, all over the landscape. It's as simple as that, and you have to do it exactly or very precisely.
I would love to. Did you see the movie Avatar?
Yes.
When you go into like someone else's brain or
their
body. I would want to do that with a piano, with you when you're playing the piano. I'm so curious.
Like point of view?
Oh, and also in your brain. I'm so curious about what it looks like to look at music and to see that as keys and to feel that and to feel, like you said, your arms touching these ivory keys, and then you're actually producing this amazing sound. It sounds, I'm very envious that you have that experience. That sounds really cool. When you look at music, do you hear the notes, or how does that work when you're actually looking at music?
So I'll
on the
just,
sheet?
funny you should mention that, because I have discussions about synesthesia often, and that is this kind of situation in the brain where our senses overlap.
Okay.
So you mentioned earlier that senses or music can bring back a memory because of the sound that we associate around hearing that music at that particular point in time. You can listen to an oldie, say in this decade, and you can listen to it now for like 6 months, and you'll create a whole new, more powerful memory probably around it. And then you listen to the song again in 10 more years, you'll have two very, how shall I say, more intense memories around this particular oldie. But now it will be even further in the past. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
So for me, I actually smell some sounds and I see color. And so for me, letters and notes are a specific color. So A is always red, like the red in your plaid shirt. It's bright stop sign red, or like the red on that. B is always orange. C is always yellow. D is black, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I see those notes on the actual musical stave, they also have that color. The actual note head does. So everything for me is color coded. This is only in regards to like reading music, but when it comes to hearing music and playing it, it's completely different. And that's like three-dimensional shapes that I see in my head, especially like string players and wind players. The shapes of the sound they literally look like three-dimensional objects.
It sounds like magic mushrooms, psilocybin, which I've never done. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never done them. I never will, I'm sure. But my friends that have taken that, and they said that it's that type of thing. Like you can see, basically have visual manifestations of music. But I do get that when I fall asleep to music. I will start to see it, definitely.
Yeah, well, there you go.
Yeah, before I fall asleep. But when I'm starting to fall asleep, if I have my headphones in, and this used to happen to me when I was a kid, and I'm sure this is typical to everybody, but you actually start to see it, and it's it's interesting.
Well, at that point, your eyes are closed, right?
Correct.
So you're seeing the sound stimulus being transformed into a visual stimulus. I mean, that's...
Yeah. So it sounds like music is obviously more than just as simple as, your eardrums are responding to various frequencies, that it penetrates into other parts of your brain. It also sounds like, I know that we had a conversation on the phone, and it sounds like music penetrates other parts of your life more than just performing and writing. Can you tell me a little bit about that, about some of the other things that you're doing that your music is involved in?
I've been working with Rob Welcher, and he has a group that he's put together with Buto and Contact Improv.
With Buto?
Buto.
What's Buto?
It's a dance form, and I'm not certainly an expert on describing it. It's for me, it's a lot of the dance forms and the practice is way over my head. So I'm learning about it myself, but I'm learning and working with them as an improvisatory artist myself. So we're all creating work that's new and like on the spot.
So they are creating dance routines or whatever you would call them, and then you were creating the music that would go with it? Right,
but it's very loosely organized or formed, meaning the dancers use the word score, which basically is like an outline of, okay, we're going to go through these sections of music or movement, and we're going to stay like 75% adhered to that form, or it might stray off somewhere else. The point of it is that the skills that we learn working together is that we're able to inventory everybody with which we're interacting and assess the room that we're in and what's happening in the room by listening and feeling it and paying attention to what everybody else is doing. It's I don't know how to describe it, but as far as my music making, to me it's transformed my music making from music making to sound making. I sat at my piano a couple of summers ago after having really have worked with this group, and Sarah Zalek is also another artist that I just really admire, and her work with this kind of improvisational body work and movement. And I sat at my piano and I said, I don't want to play music anymore. I'm going to play sound, because people don't generally understand music. Like, they don't care that this piece is an E flat and that, the clarinet is transposed to, it's a B flat instrument, or this is a triad based on blah, 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 or the meter. Most people don't relate to that, but everybody can relate to sound.
Okay.
Because that's what we hear and that's what is consumed. I say that in quotes, but that's what is witnessed or observed and experienced.
It sounds like you're scoring it in collaboration with another creative team.
It is, and so that it's to me.
I guess that's probably typical though, because people do scores for movies,
and we're just doing it on the spot. And I happen to be the only musician, so it's easier for me to manage because I don't have another musician that's also creating sound. But what's interesting is for dancers have to work with music that's already written, and so the choreography is having to respond to the music which is fixed. But in this case, dancers get to create movement, and I can respond musically to their movement and create music based off of what they've just done, or that is running simultaneously with what they're doing.
So people are on a stage, dancers, performing stuff, and is it done? Is their stuff planned out ahead of time?
No.
Okay. And
they're very loose scores.
And then you are supporting them with piano.
Yeah, but I don't play all the time. In other words,
you just decide when.
And sometimes I move the piano, like in the last performance we did over World AIDS Day a year ago. It was amazing. We had some of the original quilts from the quilt. And there was this very beautiful, respectful movement with the quilt, and we hung it. But there are parts where I just moved the piano and just kind of moved it off stage, or there's a lot of interesting.
So this definitely takes a certain type of personality, because even creative people are very regimented and planned out, whereas what you're describing is not that at all. You have to be you're like an abstract painter on the piano.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fascinating.
Or I could actually be a literal painter too. I could play a snippet of a Chopin piece just off the top of my head. It could be. It's like you could
would just show up.
Go all Andy Warhol. Just play a pop lick. And do it like 10, 20 times in a row or something.
All right,
and there's ways you can, again, this is what I love about audiences now. Audiences understand the vernacular of so many cultures and music because we have access to it. So in that sense, you can quote something and somebody in Singapore will go, "Oh, I get that." That's what I love about the ability to share music now. The other thing is that we sometimes, I think, get lost. Our local cultures get lost. Our local musical cultures. So,
what do you mean?
Well, in other words, we end up listening to what's universally appealing, and we don't pay attention to what's locally appealing.
Okay.
Because they're there, and you can hear these musicians in Chicago now here. And there's something to be. For example, I went to hear Dave Matthews last summer, and Preservation Hall Jazz warmed up, and they were amazing. And it was all of this tropical. It was not the beats that I expected. I said, "Oh wow!" So that's what's cool, and that's what's happening at Preservation Hall Jazz in New Orleans right now. But I don't go to New Orleans, and I haven't been in a while, so I'm not privy to that or aware of that. And recordings are not. I'm not necessarily going to find that or learn that from Spotify necessarily.
Okay.
But by hearing them in person, now I'm aware of what was locally. I don't think that they were just creating that music just specifically. I think that they're quoting what's going on in their culture.
Right. So
does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That you were experiencing something that was local, a local expression.
Yes. So that's. I mean, we have all the music scene in Chicago is amazing. I can't even. I mean, we're like, we have the best of the best, right?
Well, I don't know. I assume we do because we have the best of everything. Like I said, I moved here 2 years ago, and in terms of a big city and having everything that a big city offers, like this has got to be one of the best places to live in the United States. If you want a little city and the things like an Austin, Texas, or an Asheville, North Carolina, that's more your flavor. Obviously, Chicago's not your thing. But if you like all of the stuff that like an LA and a New York or Houston, like the arts type of things, I think Chicago is your best bet because, well, everyone's friendly. Also, it's easy to get around, and there's everything. Now, I don't know about the music scene, but I'm assuming maybe you can introduce me to it so I can learn about it.
Oh wow, I've got a lot of homework to do. So there's a lot of music that I want to discover, and so I'm actually changing my listening habits and my going out habits. So I don't have any set pattern.
Okay.
So something that's going to be new to you is most likely going to be new to me. If you want to, like, sure. Then we'll do a podcast about that. How about that?
Absolutely. I got to do one every Monday, so I'm always looking for topics.
I will say for one of my go-tos is Alfonso Ponticelli, and he plays at the Green Mill. And when I bring somebody to Chicago or they've never been to Chicago, I love to take them there and hear this man play the guitar. Oh my God. He always has, there's like 4 musicians. So he has a rhythm guitarist and he has a bassist and a violinist, and he plays gypsy jazz and he plays a lot of straight up jazz. And he also has a guest artist with him very often. So that's a good, wow, to hear the acoustic sound that they make and in that room is amazing.
What's are the acoustics good in that room?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think it's been, just refined over so many years.
Yeah.
It's a tight sound.
Do you go there regularly?
Not a whole lot. I live down the street and I should, but I just, I've got so much listening going on, right?
Yeah. No, like I said, I've never been there. I mean, it's not on my radar. I'm kind of like waiting for the reason to go. But it's always showing up on my Facebook feed, like artists that I follow are performing there. So I just need to do it. Something else that you mentioned when we spoke on the phone was work with Alzheimer's patients.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, I feel very privileged to be a part of this work, and it started out as a study and an endeavor. Without going too much into the details about how it was formed, what we do is we have a rehearsal. We have a senior citizens living center and that's local. And we'll have a rehearsal of about 4 to 6 musicians, and it's a wide variety of stuff. We might do a song from the 30s, a song from the 40s, then a classical piece, then, My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. So we're doing songs and music that will be from roughly each decade of a person's life that, say, is now 75 to 80 years old.
Wow, that's amazing.
So we're learning music that we would never encounter, which is really fascinating. And I'm working with these amazing musicians that are so versatile. So we'll have like a cellist, a pianist. We always have a pianist on the gig, a guitarist, a singer, and a flutist. That will be one combination. And this is all very kind of carefully planned out. And then we have a short performance of about 45 to 50 minutes with these patients, and usually a family member or 2, and then this wonderful staff of whatever facility that we're working in, and then a whole host of music therapists and their apprentices.
So are you performing at like a memory support facility, or is it a general facility?
General facility with...
And they pull in the people with memory...
With dementia and Alzheimer's, yes.
Okay. Now, how did you get into this?
I was recommended by a singer who used to be involved in the program, and then I came on. We always have two pianists. We have two pianists that rotate in and out. So I rotate with Mabel Kwan. Yeah, so there's always a pianist at the gig. And it runs for roughly 14 weeks, and we've done this now over 3 years.
So what are these patients getting out of listening to what you produce?
Oh, that's a great question. So one patient, he didn't remember the performance that we had, and it had only been about 10 or 15 minutes. And so I looked at his daughter. She's an adult woman. I mean, she's grown, and I said, let's ask him how he feels. And I said, the next time, because I had seen her at another performance, and I said, let's ask him how he feels the next time after the performance.
Right.
And so I saw him that day. I said, hey, how's it feel? How's it going today? He says, oh, great. I said, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? He says, like a 9. And I just looked at her and I said, there you go. Like, it's an afternoon and you're with your father, and for him, from his point of view, he feels like he's a 9. That's how good he feels. Whether he remembers the performance or not, that pleasure response when you listen to music, or you're going to see a great movie, that pleasure response that goes off in the brain doesn't just evaporate the instant the music's over. Mm-hmm. It lasts in the body. It's released into the body. So those chemicals, he still felt the benefit. And I'm serious about this. This is like profound, that he had relief in his physical body because of the music that he heard and doesn't remember, but he still had the benefit of it in his body for hours.
That makes complete sense to me.
It's amazing.
None of that is a surprise to me, really. But that's amazing that you are a part of that.
Yeah.
Because to me, music, obviously, if you look at how big the industry is and the amount of money that people are spending on music, to me, that means it has value. That means it is changing the way people feel.
Yes.
And that's awesome. And I think it is incredible that you have the ability to create something that changes the way people feel.
Yes.
I'm so envious that you have that. That's so cool.
But you're creating something that you're helping. Hey, Rick, what you're doing here with these podcasts, you're inviting people or witnesses to feel something. Mm-hmm. You're not making them feel something. You're inviting them to feel something. And when people are invited, they'll almost always accept, because that's a good feeling to be invited. It's good to be asked too, mm-hmm. like say, hey, or say, hey, I want you to feel this. But I think I'm learning that it's better to invite witnesses or an audience to feel something. Sound helps us feel. Music works on an intellectual level, especially for musicians. Like when I listen to music, I listen to it musically sometimes, but when I want to feel something, I listen to the music that makes me feel good. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, or makes you feel something. I mean, I have music that makes me bawl. There's songs that I listen to and they just make me cry. Every time I listen to them or I start to sing them.
Well, what was it B.B. King that said, if you're feeling sad, go listen to the blues or listen to something that's sad, and it'll make you feel better. It's like, he's right.
Yeah, it sounds sort of anti. It doesn't seem to make sense, but it's kind of like people who are hyperactive. They give them Adderall, and it calms them down. So maybe it's the same type of thing.
Reins it in, so to speak.
Who knows?
Focuses it.
Yeah, I think so.
That's the thing, is that we are mostly passive listeners as consumers of music in this day and age, and so to listen actively is when I hear young musicians like these musicians that I just worked with last week, and I hear this bass player who knows all this rep. It's like he's being thoughtful. It's apparent to me that he's being thoughtful and active with his listening rather than just hearing the music.
What's it like when you are performing with other artists? Like, what is the energy? What's the relationship with? Like, what?
It's the best.
Can you describe that?
Yeah, I would love to. And again, I've really changed my approach to how musicians, how we interact. If I'm put in the position to be a quote unquote musical director on a project, Paul, you have to create all this music and everybody's got to work together. For me, it's about what are the relationships between all of those musicians. It's to me, the relationship is very important because when we share information, we become familiar with each other. Mm-hmm. Like you and I are doing now. So that's what we do as musicians. And when you've got comfort around that process, then you get the best of the best music, and it's wonderful for everybody. Why shouldn't there be pleasure around what we're doing? I know I'm describing something that maybe sounds obvious, but as a classical musician, and a lot of musicians, we learn in university to be very task-oriented and goal-oriented. Mm-hmm. And to me, that kind of music making, it takes a feeling out of the music. It becomes about the person, one person's view of how all the music should sound. So, for example, in these rehearsals for this last job I was on, I said, we're going to take up space when one person's soloing. Let's think of it as taking up audible space. And so I didn't use musical terms. I went back to these terms and these kind of abstract forms that I'm learning with Sarah Zalick and Rob Welcher and these movement creators. And this...
Meaning the dance people.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so I've been applying these principles in like all areas of my life.
And how did they receive it?
Oh my gosh. Well, it was amazing because they would respond to when they realize that there's now everybody else is giving space, that person feels welcome to take up the space, the audible space, like when you're going to have a bass solo or a vocal solo. And so I'd say, instead of saying, hey, Cherie, sing loudly here, and everybody else sing pianissimo or play pianissimo, I said, at this point, we all want to allow Cherise to take up space. And so everybody automatically adjusts all the dynamics. So there's all of that stuff becomes built in, and it's based on everybody listening instead of one person, me, the quote unquote musical director, saying and having to just map out every song. Yeah. This is what we're going to do. No, it's up to everybody.
Yeah. It sounds like you were using language that was less about directive and more about the relationships between them and changing the relationships between the different musicians.
And the relationship between them and what's going on, the music. Because we have a relationship with that too. It's that thing that we're all trying to manage. And so now it becomes not about everybody managing what my directive, but it's about everybody using the natural skills that music allows us, which is being able to create on the spot and use our ears and our eyes and being aware of the other music makers in the room and ultimately the audience or witnesses in the room. Everybody affects it all. And so it was to great effect because when we did something simple as mechanical as, hey, we have this person's walking on stage, we have to play them on. It's like the Tonight Show, The Roots plays on a guest. And I said, we're all going to pay attention to when that person walks down to the mic and they're set. So that way it's not up to me going, okay, everybody, it's time to stop, and me throwing my hand up and being the director. It's like, we don't need that. The 8 musicians, we're all smart enough to see. And so all of the music was dovetailed and beautiful. Even those beautiful little details like that, everyone was paying attention to, and everyone felt a part of it. So it's wonderful to make those connections. And to me, that's what I've learned a lot about this Butoh and contact improv.
Yeah, it sounds like that experience with the dance has changed your relationship a little bit to how you see music.
It has. It has profoundly changed that.
And where did
Absolutely.
that come from? Was that is that something you stumbled into?
Rob and I have known each other for years, but had never been able to work together. So this was a first time, and so we did the project twice, 2 summers more or less in a row, and so we're remounting some of that again. It's hard to describe. I really can't. It's very different than anything else that I do.
I think it's amazing that you can have something that has been part of your life for so long that your relationship has changed. At this point in your life, your relationship with it changed just because you were open. If you are open and you're not rigid, you don't know what kind of people you're going to connect with, or you're open to new experiences. It could really transform you and transform your life. I recently had this conversation.
Thank you for saying that and recognizing that.
I recently had this conversation with an artist, Michael Nolan, and he was awesome. And one of the things that he told me that relates to this was he goes through life thinking that the next stranger that he runs into could possibly change the course of his life. And that's how he goes through the world. And that's an amazing way to be, because it makes you very open. And I think I'm recently in the last couple of years, I'm realizing that is very important certainly in living a creative life. But I think in being fulfilled is being less rigid and paying attention to what is being presented to you in the world, that the universe is presenting you. And that's what you pay attention to, and that's what you go with. And I think that can yield really good results.
Bravo. I couldn't. Well said. I mean, I agree 100%. That was a beautiful way to put that.
Getting back to, paying attention, responding to what's presented to us, going with, what you feel, leading with your gut a little bit more than your brain, that you need to be open to failure. You need to be open to moving forward without a plan. Are you comfortable with that? Have you always been? You're obviously comfortable with it now. Were you always comfortable with that? Or was that something that you always had to make sure that you had a success plan before you opened up and did something? For me, I was always someone that had to have a success plan in terms of the careers that I chose, really everything. Even there was always a end result in mind, even with the people that I interacted with or that I chose to spend my time with. It was always about not like, what can this do for me, but I had to see like this going somewhere type of thing.
Yeah.
And that gets you one result. If you do something where you are just leading with, I don't like leading with your heart, but like leading with your gut and like what feels right, even though you can't see what's ahead and what the plan is, but just going with it, that's going to get you different results. And you have to be very comfortable with doing that. And that speaks to all of creativity is a big, falls in that bucket. So I get my question again is just, are you just someone, which side are you in? Which bucket are you in? Are you someone that always like to have a plan?
I have more short range plans. That's kind of probably the way I am more. And again, this kind of moves over into the business aspect of,
sure,
making a living, and planning for the future, et cetera, et cetera. And yes, they do create different results. And I tend to like the first version of, being goal oriented, and to me, I tend to like that method the least.
Oh, you like that the least?
Because it usually gets me my goal, but then I'm always like, yeah, okay, well, maybe I should give myself more credit for achieving goals. I think probably 80% of what I do is based on what you're describing in the latter. It's like just because it's not, like you said, it's not just your heart and instinct. Now I'm 54 years old. I have a collection of a lot of memories and experiences and decisions. So I'm how shall I say? I'm assessing my risk in a different way than I was when I was 28 or 30.
Totally.
And so I'm bringing to the table a lot more, let's say I've picked up a lot more tools. So I'm not just kind of floating. It's still directive, but it's more about, like you said, kind of building the relationships or the connections rather than me singularly achieving my goal.
Sounds like you're right on track for 54 years old.
Thank you.
As far as I'm concerned, I think that sounds like where you should be.
Well, I loved what you said about, you said it making those changes at any point in your life, it makes you more open. It allows you to be more open. Like the decision to work with Rob and to put that as a priority, because it's changed. It's certainly, you can look at it practically and say, oh, that opens doors to all these different kinds of experiences, but it's more about what I have to contribute and how that fits in with what everybody else is doing. Mm-hmm. That's more important to me rather than me achieving my singular goals, because I love collaboration and I like the good feels with people. Like, wow, how lucky am I to be in this profession? But Rick, I've played at the Mormon Tabernacle Choir and Orchestra on international TV a year ago with Robert Sims, and they played my orchestration, the huge 70, 80 member orchestra, and I got to play it on the piano there, and they got it, and then after.
Is this on YouTube?
Yeah.
All right. We'll make sure we post it. People listening can see it.
It's Robert Sims, SIMS, and he was featured a year ago for the Martin Luther King weekend. So it's that broadcast from early January of 2019. And then they sang to us after. They brought us out for another ovation. And Robert and I sat there and faced this 350 voice choir, and they sang to us till we meet again. Like, how do you, quote unquote, top that in your career? Like, what?
Yeah, that sounds
like you just don't, like, it's happening. And I had seen them do this to another artist on YouTube before. So when they asked us to turn around, I knew what they were going to do. Robert didn't. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, to be treated with that kind of respect and for our artistry and for my respect for their artistry. And I've had so many incredible performances with Robert Sims as a collaborative pianist. And but at the same time, I'm working some with Ravinia Outreach, and we go into some of the Chicago elementary schools, and I work with Cornelius Johnson and Kim Jones, and we sing some opera for these kids. And the kids get to come up and touch the piano. They've been taught, oh, don't touch that thing. You're not allowed.
Right.
And I show them that you can touch it. Nice. And you can make sound. And the wonderful thing about the piano is that you can play one note and you've created a beautiful sound. Mm-hmm. It's not so easy to do that on the violin. You got to work a while to be able to draw the bow across the string and make a pretty sound. Or the flute. Yeah, and kids love that about the piano, that you can make a beautiful sound instantly. Anybody can.
Anybody can, even a little baby.
So, and to me, it's the same. My music making, whether it be right there with, in Salt Lake City or at Lincoln Center with Robert Sims this May, or, right here in Chicago with this group of kids, to me, the music making is the same, because I'm inviting the witnesses in the room to feel something. And people love to be invited.
That's amazing. That sounds like a wonderful, wonderful experience as a creative person. Can you give a couple suggestions, tips, or guidelines to people that are listening to this? You've had, it sounds like, a very interesting, exciting, fulfilling, creative experience with music. People listening to this, what's some advice you can give people? A couple things.
Well, I think that playing an instrument is certainly a good way to open up those channels. Mm-hmm. I believe that the brain is permanently flexible.
Oh, yeah.
So
totally.
I have one piano student at a time that I usually work with. And so I've had 2 piano students in 20 years in Chicago. And one has just finished his university degree, and he's a brilliant pianist. This other pianist is a grown-up and a professional pianist, wanted to refine his classical style. And I started teaching him in short bursts, like a toddler learns. Mm-hmm. And you watch toddlers, and they change what they're doing very quickly. But when they're on a task, they're into it. Mm-hmm. And then they're very quickly moving to the next thing. And that, to me, is how the brain acquires, it's the best way for the brain to acquire new information.
That makes sense because a toddler is its brain is developing.
Is all about acquiring new information. Everything's new information. Like I can look at the wood on your table and know how it feels on my hand if I rub it across it. But a toddler doesn't know that, and so they want to rub it across that grain and feel that for the first time. So, but I can actually feel it myself now by doing it. So it's that kind of experiential learning that has. So this band has learned to refine and play the classical style of piano, which is very strict and very technically.
Which band?
Huh?
I'm sorry. Which
This
band?
my piano student.
Oh, your piano says you're this man. Oh,
this
sorry.
man. Sorry, yeah.
I thought you said this band.
And he is. It's to great effect. Like to see him acquire these tools and to actively change his brain. It's just amazing to me.
Yeah. So that
at any age we can acquire what we want. And so my advice is for anyone that says, "Oh, I always wanted to learn the piano." Hey, learn the piano. Or I always wanted to, learn an instrument, no matter how simple, but the act of music making engages so much of our senses and so much of our brain power. And I will say this too, as a pianist, I have this other little gift that being a musician has for me. And I'm finding out that this is for a lot of people, that it's self-soothing and that I don't really feel a lot of pain or sickness in my body when I'm actually playing the piano.
Interesting.
And it's a huge gift.
You are very lucky.
I am.
I talk to a lot of people that have that with different things, such as writing music. Like I've interviewed a lot of people that had issues with OCD and depression, and they would use artwork as a way to redirect their thoughts or to make themselves feel better. So that's wonderful that you have that available to you. That's great.
Self-soothing. And so that to me is a noble goal or aspiration for anyone who wants to make music. And I'm talking about playing music, but listening actively is also can help people overcome pain or sickness or to feel better in the moment.
Or after the moment, as we talked about,
and not the artistic quality or the act of self-soothing. It's like when we help ourselves feel better, then we're better able to help others feel better. Or I think that we just are better people when we take good care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And that it's okay as a music maker. And I'm talking about as someone who, say, is a grown up, an adult now, and wants to learn a musical instrument for the first time, that it's not that person's not trying to achieve a standard or a goal,
right?
But that the good cause and that the good aspiration is to self-soothe. Like that's a good enough reason.
And that sounds like there's a lot of other unhealthy ways to self-soothe, and that sounds like a very healthy one.
Yeah, I agree.
Good. Well, thank you very much for coming to my home and talking to me. This is a great experience doing this podcast because you and I didn't know each other an hour ago, and we just had a pretty intimate conversation and a very intense. It's an intense way to get to know someone in a very short period of time. Wouldn't you agree?
I do. And thank you so much, Rick. This is really, really outstanding. Like I really, really enjoyed hearing what you had to sharing how you feel and your point of view. And then I feel privileged to sit here and share my point of view with you.
Okay, great. Is there any place that people can learn more about you? You have a website or a YouTube channel or something?
It's coming soon. I have a lot of disparate, kind of social media. So I have everything is going to collect into curiousman.com pretty soon.
Curiousman.com.
With a K. Yeah, curiousman.com. And it's offline right now because I'm actually branding and getting a lot of that stuff done right now. So I'm actually pretty excited about that. That'll be my music making spot. So.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.